Okay, so hello everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's session on the Biomedical Catalyst 2021 briefing webinar. So One Nucleus is very pleased to be delivering this session in collaboration with Innovate UK. So during the session, we'll hear an overview of the programme, followed by a case study from a grant recipient. And then we're also going to hear from those involved on the Innovate UK Edge programme on the support that they provide to SME life science businesses. So really looking forward to hearing this update, and I'll shortly introduce our first speaker. Just to highlight that throughout the session, the chat box is going to be enabled. So we did one of these sessions last year, and there was an overwhelming number of queries. So it's a really good opportunity to use this to ask your questions to the experts online today, whether or not you are considering applying, or maybe it's something in future that you're going to be doing, or if you're in process. So it's a brilliant opportunity to do that. Just to highlight, if you have a question and you don't want to be identified, then you can actually choose to send the question privately to myself, and I'll read those out at the end of the session. And for those who joined at the beginning, you will have heard that we're also recording the session. And as part of the post-event follow-up, I will send that out. So you can also use that as an opportunity to recap on any parts of the presentations. So we have a series of 4 presentations, and then some Q&A, time for Q&A at the end. So I'm going to jump into introducing the first presenter. So it's Dr. Gordon Ford, who's Innovation Lead for Biomedical Enabling Technologies at Innovate UK. So you're going to be doing an overview of the programme, isn't that right, Gordon? So I'll hand to you first to kick things off. Thanks.
I will share my screen, and hopefully that has worked. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yeah. So thanks, Alicia, and thanks to One Nucleus for inviting Innovate UK here today. So my name is Gordon Ford. I work for Innovate UK, which is part of UKRI, and I'm going to present an overview of the Biomedical Catalyst programme and some information about the current open competition. We've also invited here today Stephen Wrigley from Hypha Discovery. So Hypha has been successful in Innovate UK grant applications, including the Biomedical Catalyst, and we've got Steve along here today to share his experience of that project. We also have here today Dan Deering. Dan has previously been an assessor on Innovate UK competitions, including the Biomedical Catalyst, and he's going to bring his perspective. And Tom Graver is here to introduce Innovate UK Edge and the business support that they can provide. So Innovate UK is part of UKRI, which is an umbrella organisation that was formed about 2 years ago, and it includes, it brings together the research councils, Research England and Innovate UK. An overall budget for UKRI is around £7 billion. And Innovate UK in there can be considered like a research council for industry. So the role of Innovate UK is really to drive productivity and economic growth, and support businesses and support innovative research that is driven by business. The Biomedical Catalyst is a programme that has been run since 2012. So it's Innovate UK's largest, longest running and broadest healthcare programme. So to date, the Biomedical Catalyst has funded projects to a total of around £240 million over the past 9 years. The aim of the programme is to deliver growth for the health and life sciences sectors, deliver innovative life sciences products and services quickly and effectively into healthcare, and to support commercially led R&D. So Biomedical Catalyst was set up in 2012, and it was born of the 2012 UK strategy for life sciences, which recognised that market failure, sometimes called the valley of death, for investment in a lot of innovative companies, but particularly in life sciences. So we're there, the Biomedical Catalyst there is to help fill that gap. So the programme supports companies to carry out innovative development work to enable market access or to attract further investment that can go into later stage development. And we recognise that 9 years on, that gap still exists, and the need for the Biomedical Catalyst programme still exists. Biomedical Catalyst is really broad. So we call it technology agnostic. So the scope, when you read the scope in our online brief, we are looking for the development of solutions to health or care challenges. So that it's really broad. And over the years, we've funded a vast range of projects, including advanced therapies, diagnostics, software, robotics, vaccines, drug delivery systems, but also things like new manufacturing processes in health and life sciences, AI for drug discovery. We've even once funded the development of teaching materials for medical students. So long as it fits that very broad scope, it's in scope for the Biomedical Catalyst. So the Biomedical Catalyst, there are 4 streams to it: feasibility, primer, early stage and late stage. And we usually run these competitions 2 at a time. So what do we mean by feasibility? Feasibility is, an exploration into the potential of an innovative idea. Primer would be the evaluation of technology through to proof of concept. An early stage project would be perhaps about creating a data package that is sufficient to support testing of a product in a clinical or another relevant environment. And a late stage project would be testing a well-developed concept to show effectiveness in a relevant environment. And that's likely to include demonstration and validation. And these broadly map on to technology readiness levels 3 to 8. And this diagram really is just to demonstrate that we fill that gap between basic and applied research and products on the market. But we don't fund basic and applied research, and we don't fund anything that's already on the market. So feasibility and primer competitions are generally smaller. So we use a 1-stage assessment process for these. So the assessment process for all of our streams starts the same. So we have 10 questions, 10 application questions, and these look at healthcare need. What is the scientific evidence to support your solution? Where is the innovation? What is your technical approach? Do you have freedom to operate? What would be your exploitation plans? Where are the risks to your projects? Do you have the right skills and resources to deliver? And the last and one of the most important questions is about added value. Why do you need public money for this? Because, like I said, this program is to fill in that investment gap. So with feasibility and primer competitions, it's a 1-stage process. That your applications, your answers to those 10 questions will be sent to 5 independent assessors. And we have an assessment pool for the Biomedical Catalyst of 400 independent assessors, and they come from business, people like yourselves. They are often clinicians, academics. We have VCs, business consultants, and what we try and do is match the applications to assessors with the right sort of experience. They will mark that out of 100. And for feasibility and primer awards, essentially the top scoring project gets funded and then the second one, and then the third one until we run out of budget. It's a bit of a different process for early and late stage. It's a two-stage process. So again, there's 10 questions. These are assessed. Then the top scoring projects will be invited to a panel interview. And that panel interview makes an assessment. You're invited to come, give a presentation, you'll be asked questions. That panel will make an assessment based on the technology, the business case, and again, that additionality question. They will score the project, and again, top one gets funded, the second one gets funded until we run out of budget. So that's the process. And I should mention that the currently open Biomedical Catalyst competition is a second stage. It's the early stage and late stage competition. So just maybe of interest, 2 years ago, Ipsos Mori did an independent report on the Biomedical Catalyst and its impact to see if it does what it was designed to do, and their results were very positive. It suggested that the Biomedical Catalyst was good at generating public funds for R&D from private funds for R&D. It increased employment in companies that received Biomedical Catalyst grants. They looked at 150 companies that were funded by Biomedical Catalyst, compared them to companies that had applied but just missed out. And they've identified that by winning a Biomedical Catalyst grant, those companies have leveraged up to £710 million in additional VC funding. And they conclude with the fact that the Biomedical Catalyst appears to be at least as effective as R&D credits in stimulating private R&D investment. So moving on to the currently open competition. So that's an early and late stage round. There is £18 million available for projects. The total project costs can be up to £4 million, between £250,000 and £4 million. And Innovate UK can provide up to 70% of the total project costs for SMEs. So it can be 70% if you're a small company doing industrial research. But we also fund medium-sized companies. We do not fund in this round large companies. We're essentially working to the same state aid rules as we did while we were in the EU. That may change in future, but that means we don't take any stake in the company, and those old state aid rules will still apply. As I mentioned before, the whole program is technology agnostic. So long as you're answering that question, we are developing a solution to a health or care challenge, you should be in scope. And so long as you fit within the right sort of TRL level. So these early and late stage projects, we expect these to be of a length of 12 to 36 months. We would expect the projects to start on, I think it's the 1st of April next year. So how to apply? You can either go to the UKRI website, or you can go to the innovateuk.gov.uk website. Click on funding opportunities and you will come to the innovation competitions page, and you can scroll down and you can look at all of our currently open competitions, and you will get to the Biomedical Catalyst 2021 early and late stage awards. You can look at the tabs. There will be summary of the competition, information about eligibility and scope, the dates, so when you would expect to get a response about whether you've been successful, and the dates of the potential dates of the interviews. And if you click on how to apply, that tells you those 10 questions that you have to answer. You can then start a new application, pop in your details, you can save as you go along. But what I would suggest is, so this deadline of 11 AM on the 26th of August, that is non-negotiable. We literally cannot open up the program again to allow people to apply after that time. So I would very much recommend that if you are applying, try and get it in a few days before that close date. So I'll just finish off with some FAQs, some of the things that people often ask for in these briefing sessions. What can you use the money for? It doesn't have to be wet lab innovation. It doesn't have to be a clinical trial. You can reserve some money for regulatory consultancy, implementation of a quality management system, conformity assessment, design and testing. You can fund intellectual property protection up to £7,500, and you can fund clinical investigation. Can we collaborate? Yes, absolutely, but you don't have to. You can work as an individual company, or you can have official partners. The lead applicant, though, has to be a UK registered SME, and you can partner, if you like, with another company, an SME or a large company, or a non-economic activity taking organisation like the NHS or an academic group or a catapult. Now, all of your work has to be done in the UK. And that's the same for most of the Innovate UK programmes. However, in the Biomedical Catalyst, if you have a very good reason that means that your work cannot be done in the UK, you can contact Innovate UK 10 days before the close date, outlining why you can't do that, and you'll get a response to tell you if it will be allowed or not. Because we do recognise if you are developing a therapy for Zika virus, you might not be able to test it in the UK. So we do recognise that that's important for the Biomedical Catalyst, that is an option. Collaborate with universities, NHS, other organisations, research organisations. If you are another SME partner, you can claim, again, up to 70% of your total costs. If you are conducting non-economic activities, if you're a university or NHS, you can claim up to 100% of their costs. If you don't collaborate officially, you can subcontract. And we'll just use an example of if you were doing, say, preclinical testing with an NHS trust, your total project costs are £1 million. You can collaborate. The NHS trust can come in as a collaborator. They can claim 50% of the total costs at a 100% rate. So they can claim £500,000. If you were a small company, for example, doing industrial research, you could claim 70%. So up to £375,000. But you might choose that, you might think that you don't want to use the NHS as a partner, or getting a partnership agreement might be too difficult. You can subcontract. Again, here the SME can claim up to 70% of the total costs and pay the NHS directly. And what can't you use fund money for? As I mentioned, we're using the old state aid rules, so we can't fund anything that is on the market. So everything has to be pre-market. We don't fund iterations of products. There is a question in the application about innovation. How innovative is your product? We don't fund iteration. So we also don't allow Me Too products. It might be new for you, but if someone else has already got it on the market, we won't fund that. And it must meet that objective of being a solution to a health and care need. Our assessors see that question. They see the scope for this project, so they'll be looking for that. So if you are developing a platform technology, and we have funded that before, you might want to frame your application in a way where you have described how your technology is a solution to a health and care challenge. Now, if after all of that you think that the project that you have in mind doesn't fit with the Biomedical Catalyst, we are also running a Smart Grants competition at the same time. So that closes the day before the Biomedical Catalyst. That is completely technology agnostic. It doesn't have to be a solution to a health and care challenge. There are differences in eligibility, so it may be worth looking at that. You can find it in the same page as the Biomedical Catalyst application page. And I should also point out that if you feel that the idea that you have would be a feasibility or a primer project, we are planning to have a feasibility and primer round in October. So keep checking back at our website to check for that. You can get support with an application. I would direct you to the Knowledge Transfer Network. The Knowledge Transfer Network offers a free service of reviewing applications if you need an extra pair of eyes on your application. Innovate UK Edge, and Tom will be outlining how they can support businesses. And also, if you're looking for partners, I would suggest that you also look at the Catapult network. So the Cell and Gene Therapy Catapult or the CPI might be able to help. They've got a lot of experience working with SMEs on Biomedical Catalyst projects. You will have an opportunity to ask questions at the end of this session. But if you have any questions after this session, I would suggest that you contact us via the customer support service, and the email's at the bottom of the slide there. And the reason we do this is because they're great. They will answer your questions within 48 hours, but they will be able to identify the right person to answer your question. If you have a finance question, they'll send it to finance. If it's a question about your ability to fill in the application form, if there's an IT issue, they'll send it to our competitions team. If it's a question about scope, they'll send it to me or a member of the Biomedical Catalyst team. So that's all I have to say today. So now what I would like to do is pass you on to stop sharing. Stephen Wrigley from Hypha Discovery, who is going to introduce himself and introduce the company, I think, and give some of his experience with the Biomedical Catalyst.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Gordon. So I'm going to give an overview of a project that we finished at the end of last year, called From Oxygen to Nitrogen, Engineering the Gap, brackets, N-glucuronidation by biocatalysis. So I'm going to need to explain what all that means. But before I do that, I would like to introduce Hypha Discovery. So we're based near Oxford, UK. We started off as a natural products discovery company, but for the last 10 years, we've been mainly focused on microbial biotechnology and specifically making metabolites of drugs and diversifying lead compounds using microbial biotransformations. And for the early years, that was almost entirely by whole cell microbial biotransformation, which is quite a labor-intensive effort. We've been successful. We've got a worldwide client base. We've worked with most of the top 10 global pharmaceutical companies and agrochemical companies. We'd like to believe that we have a reputation for excellence and innovation in metabolite synthesis. So this Biomedical Catalyst project that we've just finished certainly wasn't the first Innovate UK funded project that we've undertaken. I think fairly on in our biotransformation existence, one of the limitations of doing whole cell microbial biotransformation is it all has to be done here on site in Hypha laboratories. And that means people tend to come to us very late in the day after they've tried everything else. So one of the things that we first wanted to do is to harvest the enzymes responsible for oxidative biocatalysis from our most talented microorganisms. And we did through this through a series of 4 Innovate UK funded projects. We sequenced 6 organisms. We harvested the cytochrome P450 enzymes by cloning them, expressing them in E. coli, and then making enzyme preparations. And this allowed us to develop our first product as such, the Polysips kit, and then there was a second generation, the Polysips Plus kit. But we can now sell these to scientists around the world for them to use in their own laboratories to see whether some of these enzymes can make the drug metabolites they're interested in. So that's doing very well for us. How important was the Innovate UK support? It was very important. I think when we applied for our first grant, there were fewer than 10 of us in the company. So over a period of about 6 years now, the company's grown 2 to 3-fold. And the development of this Polysips product has been accelerated with the assistance of those grants. I don't think we would have launched it yet if we were trying to fund it from our own contract service revenues. So Innovate UK has been very important to Hypha Discovery. So moving on to the last project, the Biomedical Catalyst one. The aim of this project was to develop biosynthetic systems for the production of milligram to gram amounts of N-glucuronide drug metabolite standards. And that includes de novo synthesis of the cofactors needed. So this is driven by an increasing use in drug design of nitrogen heterocyclic chemistry. That's mainly aimed at reducing cytochrome P450 related metabolism, but it's resulting in the need, of the generation of a lot more N-glucuronide metabolites when these investigational drugs are studied in the clinic. So this means that there's a strong likelihood for new regulatory requirements to characterize these, especially because they tend to have activity and there is a big potential for drug-drug interactions. And there's also a potential for reduction in the use of laboratory animals, which is another important driver. Just in case anybody is wondering chemically what I'm talking about, these are drugs. The moiety highlighted in red is a glucuronide. When these drugs are administered, the body tries to get rid of them, so the glucuronide is conjugated to the drug, and that improves or accelerates its excretion. There's specific issues that we wanted to address. Chemical synthesis of N-glucuronide metabolites is challenging and difficult. So you often need to use biosynthesis, and this mostly uses higher animals or tissue fractions from these, so S9 and liver microsome fractions. So that's not ideal. There are some non-animal systems, but they tend to be inadequate, mainly because of the expense of the recombinant human enzymes involved and of the UDPGA cofactor involved, which, by the way, is also needed for the animal tissue fractions. So wild-type microorganisms are used successfully for the production of other sorts of glucuronides, particularly acyl and oxygen glucuronides. And that's a major business area for Hypha. We have a lot of talented microorganisms that can make these metabolites very successfully. But those same microorganisms, when they're given an N-glucuronide substrate, they tend to produce only very low yields. So we wanted to try to improve that. And working with Professor John Ward's group at University College London, we came up with 2 solutions. The first of these was a bacterial approach, which uses our most talented glucuronidating bacteria. And we wanted to harvest the glycosyltransferase transferase involved in the production of glucuronide metabolites from these, and then apply mutation strategies to improve their yields with N-glucuronidation reactions. Then we decided that we also needed a complementary eukaryotic approach, and this would use synthetic biology to develop a novel recombinant E system expressing human glycosyl transferases together with the enzyme machinery involved in generating cofactors. And that was aimed at overcoming limitations seen in previous systems. But then for the grant itself, This was a joint application, as I said, with Professor John Ward. The bacterial work was based at Hypha, and the eukaryotic work was based at UCL. The application was put together by ourselves. We don't use outside consultants because we think we've got quite a good experience of writing these applications now. And I have to say that writing these grants is an interdisciplinary collaboration between the scientists in the company, plus their business development colleagues who are very important for assessing the market and the exploitation plans, and then our financial controller who comes up with all of the financial details that need to be included. So the application was made at the end of 2018, and we started the beginning of April 2019. The initial duration was 18 months, but of course we hit problems last year. There was COVID-19 disruption. A little bit at Hypha, but it was particularly bad at University College London because their labs were closed between March and August, and that slowed things down considerably. But we were supported by Innovate UK, who responded by opening up a round of COVID-19 continuity grants, and we applied for that, and we got a 3-month extension to the end of 2020. And I should say that Innovate UK monitoring officer, Chris Stabile-Barnett, was very supportive and responsive, and we're very grateful to him for helping us through that period. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of what we did. This is a graphic showing how work package 1, which was the bacterial work package, worked, and it was a combination of developing an assay system to look for N-glucuronidation and combining random mutagenesis of our best glucuronidating strains to try to improve their N-glucuronidation capabilities, but a more informatics-based sequencing of the genomes of these organisms, looking for the glycosyl transferase enzymes, expressing and cloning and expressing them in E. coli, and then trying to mutate these to improve their N-glucuronidation capability. So now I'll just move on to the achievements, and I think I'll go to the bottom of the slide first. I would say that overall, the aim of developing improved biotransformation systems for N-glucuronidation has yet to be achieved. But we did find the project outputs very useful, and we've been continuing to evaluate and develop these since the grant completed. The eukaryotic approach was successful in expressing a human glucuronidating enzyme, and also separately successful in expressing the biosynthetic enzymes needed for the biosynthesis of UDPGA. And they made all of the constructs that they planned to make, combining the expression of these two enzyme systems, but they're still to be properly evaluated, and they've all been transferred to Hypha Discovery, and we will be evaluating them over the coming months. The bacterial approach, I think, has had more success, and the most successful part of it was the focus strategy of sequencing the best strains and mining their genomes. And at the end of the project, we'd found 3 glycosyl transferases that we could express in E. coli with good glucuronidating capabilities, and 4 that we hadn't been looking for initially, but they glycosylate instead of glucuronidate. And actually there is a potential use for those in making agrochemical metabolites that we're exploring. Now, what I can say is that over the months since the beginning of this year, those numbers have gone up, and we've got more glucuronidating enzymes and more glycosylating enzymes. But more importantly, we understand a lot more about them now, and we're able to, whereas in the grant, we were using them for whole cell biotransformations when they were expressed in E. coli and Streptomyces lividans, now we know better how to express them and purify them. And so we're getting to the point where we want to revisit the mutation. But the best glycosylating glucosyl transferase has a very broad substrate range, including a lot of and glycosylation. So that's a very good place to start. So we always expected this project to be challenging. And I think one of the takeaway conclusions at the moment is that you know, there are significant technical barriers here for anybody trying to do the same thing that we did, and that you know, our glucuronidation business model at the moment continues to have value going forward, but we do want to remain at the forefront of this field, so we will be evaluating these outputs further, and we may even be making more grant applications to help us do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks. We'll take questions at the end, but now could I introduce Daniel Deering. So Daniel Deering works for Innovate UK Edge, but today he's presenting on his expertise as a assessor for Innovate UK and the Biomedical Catalyst, and giving us some insights.
Okay.
Over to you, Dan.
Can you see that?
Yes, yes we can.
Excellent, good start. So hi everybody, I'm Daniel Deering, as Gordon said. I'm a Senior Innovation and Growth Specialist for St John's Innovation Centre and Innovate UK Edge. But as Gordon also said, I act as an independent technical assessor for Innovate UK in various different grant funding competitions. I reckon I've probably assessed something like 500 or more grant applications in the last 5 years. So I've got a reasonably good perspective on what good looks like and what assessors are typically looking for in an application. So I haven't got very long today, but I'm going to try and sort of share some thoughts on this with you. So I haven't really got time to go into specific questions. So I'm just going to give you a few kind of golden rules from an assessor's perspective. Sorry, bear with me. There you go. So first golden rule, I always tell the clients that I work with, is make it easy for the assessors to give you a high score. This might sound kind of obvious, but the fundamental golden rule is that you really try to think, with every question that you answer, how can I minimize the amount of work that the assessor has to do to understand my answer and to make it as easy as possible for them to give me a high score for this question? Or in other words, how can I make it difficult for them to justify giving me a lower score? So it helps to imagine yourself in their position and think about what you would want to see in order to award a high score and provide good feedback. And part of the key to that is the next golden rule is to actually answer the exam question, which again may seem blindingly obvious, but it's very important that you read the applicant's guidance. And Gordon showed in his presentation earlier the competition portal page. In the How to Apply tab is where you will find the questions that you have to answer. And for every question, there's a fairly detailed explanation of what we're looking for in the answer to that question. So it's very important to answer the question that's been asked, not the one that you want to answer or the one that best fits your latest marketing flyer. Try to answer all the parts of the question that apply to your project. Not all parts of the question will apply to your specific project, but these competitions are designed, as Gordon said, to cover quite a wide range of different health technologies. It's often best to really kind of spell out what you want to say very explicitly, not be vague, not make implications or leave anything to the assessor's imagination. So, you know, if you want the assessor to draw conclusions from what you're saying, state the conclusion. Don't allow the assessor to draw their own conclusions, because they might not draw the conclusions that you want them to. So the next tip, next golden rule, is to be specific and quantified. So try to avoid making vague or speculative and unquantified claims and statements, because it's very difficult for an assessor to reliably judge whether your claim is correct or valid or not, if they're vague, unmeasurable. So read every answer you've written and ask yourself, have I made any claims? And if so, are those claims measurable and specific? And have I evidenced them or substantiated them in some way? And you know, to try to quantify any claims or benefits that you claim, or cost savings, revenues, profits, etc., as much as you can. The next one on this slide is that the assessors may not be experts in your exact field, and I completely sympathise with Innovate UK and the people who run these competitions in the massive task of selecting appropriate assessors for all of these competitions. I applaud their efforts every time in these competitions. But I think even if you have 5 assessors that are experts in your field, it's usually unlikely that they will have come across your exact proposition. And so even an experienced assessor who is an expert in your field will benefit from a nice, clear, simple to understand explanation of what your technology is, what the science behind it is, and the evidence that that science is compelling. So you can't assume that the assessors will be experts in your technology or sector, though. So try not to use too many technical terms. If you do use technical terms, try and explain them at some point. And I always say, don't assume that they know anything that you haven't explicitly stated. Again, that may seem obvious. So the next golden rule is evidence is key. So any kind of statements you make, figures, claims, and statistics will almost always carry more impact and be more credible if they're backed by some kind of evidence. Where possible, include references to publicly available technical documents. I find that government reports, NHS reports from NHS England, the ONS, those kind of organisations often carry quite a lot of weight. Market reports, white papers, etc. And if you need somewhere to put an actual reference, often the appendices are good places to put those references. The next one, number 6, is kind of make sure you demonstrate a compelling need. I mean, this may seem obvious as well. All of these are obvious, really. It's all just common sense. Some applications, though, do come across as technology push. And so they're kind of, you know, I have seen applications that are thinly veiled academic research projects looking for a market application, or projects that are kind of Me Too projects, attempting to solve the need that many others are already targeting. So if yours, you know, kind of fits into either of those, it's very important to properly describe the need, the nature of the need, and the scale of that need, and the impact of that need, perhaps in terms of the cost to the NHS of treating the condition that you're targeting or something. I also find that describing a high-level challenge, like, for instance, the rise of obesity and diabetes, is not detailed enough. You really need to be more specific about one or more of the problems or challenges that contribute to that overall societal challenge, and to describe why existing practices or solutions are not adequate to really address that challenge. And then you can indicate how your proposed innovation will address that challenge in a better way than existing solutions or practices. Number 7 is kind of all about making your scientific evidence easy enough to understand. So, like I said before, even assessors who are subject matter experts will appreciate a simplified explanation of the underpinning scientific evidence and principles. And so really ensure that you've explained the evidence and the conclusions that you want the assessors to derive from it in clear and simple terms. And if you provide graphs or statistics, explain what they mean, explain what they prove. And in some cases, you won't have concrete evidence. So I always say that the next best thing to concrete evidence is a clear explanation of how you will gather that evidence and what you expect that evidence to show. Last golden rule, there are many more, but I could only fit 8 in my presentation. And this is very important as well. Do your homework about the competition. So when you're describing the current state of the art or describing how your innovations differentiate from existing products, solutions, or practices, no assessor likes to see the claim, our solution is completely unique and there's no other solution anything like it on the market. Firstly, it's very rarely true. And if the assessor actually takes the time to do a bit of research on their own and finds other solutions that do meet this need, they might reasonably conclude that you've deliberately misled or just been lazy with your research. So I always say that it's much better to indicate that whilst there may be no direct competitors, there may be other solutions that kind of take different approaches to solve the same problem or a similar problem. And then you can discuss the weaknesses in those approaches. That's about it from me. I'm going to skip over the next slide. This is all about the kind of support that Innovate UK Edge can provide when you're applying for one of these grants, either with the Biomedical Catalyst or any other funding program. I'm assuming that these slides will be made available to everyone afterwards. So I'm just going to leave that in there. And then also you have my contact details here as well. I'd be very happy to take questions after this event. And so thank you very much for listening to me.
Thanks, Dan. And I should also mention on your 8th rule there about doing your homework on the competition, I should point out that actually you can go and look at everything that we have funded before in the Biomedical Catalyst. If you just Google Innovate UK grant funded projects, the first page that you should get to is a .gov.uk page that has a spreadsheet of everything that we've funded. You can filter for the Biomedical Catalyst, and there is a synopsis for all of the projects that we've funded. And when I was applying for Innovate UK grants, I always found that quite useful.
Brilliant. Good.
So if I can now pass on to Tom Graver, again from Innovate UK Edge, to outline the business support that Innovate UK Edge can provide.
There we go. Good afternoon. Can you all see my slides okay?
Yeah. Well, it's fine.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. So yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I work alongside Dan for Innovate UK Edge as a project officer. So yeah, we're based in St John's Innovation Centre in Cambridge. But there's actually a range of different innovation and growth specialists spread out throughout the whole of the UK. Now, originally we were formed back in 2015 as part of the Enterprise Europe Network. Since Brexit, of course, yeah, we've had to completely rebrand, but we still have access and work closely alongside Enterprise Europe Network. So we still have access to many kind of international companies. You can see kind of on there some of the key impacts that we've had since our formation, including kind of £350 million in funding and finance raised across the network. So the type of companies that we usually support are kind of innovative and growth or scaling companies. They might have a headcount, now it's increased actually to a max of 500 people, but we can support many of those companies in many different areas. The way that we kind of structure our support is we normally have like an initial sit-down session with the client, and we kind of have a discussion. It's very kind of client-led support, so we focus on the needs of the client, and so we start off with a needs analysis and have a look at what the client might need, what their ambitions are, where they want to get to, do they want to internationalize, if so, where. So one area, as you can see on this slide, is kind of the exploitation of innovation. So that might be help to identify the potential IP assets in your company or in your business activities. We also have an IP audit scheme, which helps you to actually action the IP protection of your company. We can help you to develop an innovation management strategy, so kind of really help you to develop your ideas and move them forward. It could be that you need help with your business strategy. So it could be anything like that. Around kind of market readiness, we can support you with things like your value proposition. We can support you to develop a marketing strategy, including kind of identifying your initial kind of stakeholders, any kind of initial customers, and just, basically help you to support and approach them. If you've already got customers, which I'm assuming kind of a lot of you don't, but you might be thinking about kind of how to manage the customers. So we can help you with, for example, like integration of a CRM system, something like that. So this next piece, funding and finance, is something that myself, Dan and the team, we kind of have some expertise in. So as Dan mentioned before, he has some grant assessor expertise, and he basically leads that for the team. Myself, I've got some expertise in the valuation of companies, preparing for equity investment, or it might be that you're looking for match funding. We can help you to kind of critique your pitch deck. As Dan said earlier, we can help you to critique your grant application, just provide some feedback. The one thing we can't do is actually write out that application, but we can take the role of a kind of a critical friend with that. And if I move over to the next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, we still have strong links with Enterprise Europe Network. And as part of that, we have a partnerships tool. Now, what that is basically a whole database of profiles of companies throughout Europe that are looking for potential partners. So that could be for to develop like grant consortia, or it could be that you're looking for a commercial partner. You could be looking for a partner to license, but what you do, you kind of will help you to create that profile, to word it in such a way, kind of what you're looking for and what you do. And then you are able to then approach some of these other network partners throughout Europe. Likewise, they're forever checking the database. So we have many inquiries and alerts to from some of their companies that are looking for potential partners in the UK. If I move over to the next slide. So once you've kind of finished your growth trajectory, you might be looking to scale. You might be looking for rapid growth. Now, at this stage, we have a scale-up program, which is delivered by a whole national range of scale-up directors. Now, these come from all sorts of different backgrounds. They have all sorts of different expertise of working with scale-up companies. And similar to our support that I mentioned earlier, they sit down and carry out like a needs analysis with you. There's typically like a diagnostic involved. And then they can work out where you need support and help you to really kind of reach that growth trajectory. One new offer that we now have is a scale-up peer-to-peer network, which is where we get a load of key decision makers in scaling companies, and we bring them all together and we discuss kind of various themes that might affect them. So it might be even as basic as like the logistics of a scaling company. It could be something like funding, how to access funding as a scaling company, and it's also really to reduce that feeling of isolation that many kind of scaling companies, members of the senior management team may feel they have. Okay, so this kind of fits in our access to finance and funding camp, but basically this is a pitch fest offer of, it takes the form of 2 days of initial kind of pitch training. So what that is 1 day of kind of intense training led by an expert to help you really have an understanding of what to include in your pitch deck, what to say, how to say it in a way that investors will really kind of appreciate. Beyond that, the second day, you then have a kind of a peer-to-peer network opportunity. So you'll have like a week to develop your pitch deck. You'll all be brought in the same room for a discussion. You'll all present your pitch decks and you'll receive some peer feedback. You'll also have the expert in the room as well to offer his kind of feedback and guidance on the situation. Beyond that, you'll then have an investor panel day. So you'll have a certain time slot where you can sit down in front of a panel of investors in your region and deliver your pitch deck, your pitch presentation, and receive more investor feedback and guidance directly from the investors' mouths. And then this is all wrapped around by bespoke support and advice. So either someone like myself, someone like Dan will sit down with you, and we can offer kind of extra feedback and offer extra support beyond the end of the PitchFest initiative. So it's really just kind of a wraparound support just to make sure you get the funding and the support that you need, because obviously it's quite a stressful process, especially if you're looking for something like some match funding for a grant, something like that. Okay, and applications for PitchFest are currently open. So you can see the 2 deadlines on the screen there. So 14th of September for the East of England edition. If you scan that QR code in the bottom of the screen, you'll actually be able to access the Innovate UK Edge website. Yeah, you'll see the application form on there, that you'll see some further details and things like that on there as well. It's probably worth saying that actually in the East of England edition of PitchFest, since its inception, so about 4 years ago, biotech and healthcare companies have raised over £10 million in investment following attendance at PitchFest. Okay, and just remember, luck is where preparation and opportunity collide. You can see my name and contact details on the page. So yeah, feel free to reach out if you'd like some support. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Tom. So we've got a wee bit of time to take questions. I don't know if you've received any additional questions, Alicia.
I think the ones in the chat box that have gone to everyone are the only ones. So there was one around, so in light of EU state aid rules no longer applying, how that affects grant funding under this scheme.
Under UID, so we no longer apply UID as such. I believe we still do that with companies that are based in Northern Ireland, however. Our project finance team will assess any applicant's financial viability, though. So it's similar and related to UID. I think it's as robust, but maybe not so rigid. So if there are any issues, if it looks as if a company may not be financially viable, you won't be thrown out of the competition straight away. Our project finance team will discuss this with you and try to work with you to produce enough evidence that they can say that you are financially viable.
Just to say, that was a really interesting set of presentations, and especially hearing that the case study as well. So thank you for that, Stephen, in terms of all the science as well. That was really fascinating, and the impact that the grant had. So really interesting to hear that, and the top tips and tricks. That's really one to take away. So really interesting there. So just to highlight to those on the line, if there are any other questions that you think of post the event, then please feel free to get in touch. I will send a copy of the recording out, so I guess that way you'll be able to access the content presented on the slides. But if you do want any further, further copies of the slides, then just let me know. And then of course there are contact details for each of the presenters on there, so you can feel free to get in touch directly that way. So I think Gordon, you picked up some of the questions in the chat box, didn't you? So you've you've got through those, I think. So that's brilliant. So with that, I think we're actually up to time now. So I'd just like to say thank you to all of the presenters for being with us today and presenting, and then of course all of the attendees. I really hope you found that useful in terms of whether, like I said, you're thinking of applying, it's something for future, or so yes, hopefully that's really guided you in those respects. And yes, with that, just like to wish you a good rest of the day, and thank you very much for joining. Thanks.
Thanks, Alicia.
Thank you.